I'm Pal Howie, and today I'm going to be talking to you about why and how confronting fear of success is a grief process. Okay, so I think I'm probably going to have to explain some of the terms in there, but I'm hoping that you get the gut feel, the gut reaction of what this talk is all about. So, about a year or so ago, I decided to start really seriously researching fear of success. I started looking out at TED Talks. I started looking out at articles written about fear of success. I started looking for books on fear of success. And I really didn't come up with anything much at all. Now, I knew that there really was a fear of success because I talked about it with people in business trainings. I talked about it with people in writing sessions. And when it came up, we all talked about it, we considered it, and we said, I feel like I've got a fear of success. And somebody else would say, yes, I understand. Yes, I've experienced that. Yes, this is what it feels like. And that felt really, really good because I didn't feel alone. But having said that, I didn't feel like I was getting it. I didn't feel like I could really understand it. And when I started looking online, what I found were things that were very unhelpful or a little bit helpful, but not really. So one of the most unhelpful things I read was, there's no such thing as fear of success, just fear of hard work. Well, I knew that wasn't true. And another thing I learned was watching a really good TED Talk, which was, fear of success is fear of loss of success. And I thought, yes, that rings true. That is part of fear of success. So I thought, well, that's part of it. And I actually came up with 5 different types of fear of success that I discovered. And if you look at just that first one, that fear of success is fear of loss of success, well, you can understand how that relates to grief and grieving. And if you know anything about grief and grieving, you may understand that a grief process doesn't just relate to death or dying. It can also relate to change, even positive change. And likewise, we got some 5 states and stages of grief as well. Denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and finally acceptance. Okay, so there's a lot of 5s in this. So if you look at that fear of loss of success, it's really understandable and obvious even that our fear of success is a grief process. When we actually step up and experience success and have the courage to not fear the loss of that success so much that we don't actually go for it, we will often encounter feelings of loss. Or we may encounter our experiences of loss in the past. Let me not get too deep into that though, because there's a lot of ground to cover. But anyway, when I was still doing my research on fear of success, one of the things I discovered is that fear of success is a really, really good hider. And when I actually look back in my research, the thing that was the most sort of tangible was the passage that Marianne Williamson wrote more than 10 years ago, I don't know, maybe 15, 20 years ago, in which she said, we are more afraid of our power. Our greatest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our greatest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. So we have actually known about this fear of our own power. We've known about this fear of success for a really long time. But what I couldn't find when I was out there looking at all these answers and things going on was, what are we actually going to do about it? If we know there's a problem, what are we actually going to do about it? How do we fight it? How do we confront that fear of success? Okay. So another type of fear of success I discovered in my research was this, and I thought this was really good. It's fear of consequences of success. So it's fear of making a lot of money. It's fear of having more time. It's fear of responsibility. Fear of visibility. And that was a big trigger for me. You know, I read that and I thought, oh yeah, definitely. And that's part of it. That's definitely part of it. And what happens when we encounter our consequences of success is that there's a transition. And it may be a transition within ourselves, it may be a transition with our friends, with our family, with the way we're perceived. It could be a transition with the media, it could be any of those things. And that transition can bring about it feelings of loss and feelings of grief. And one of the consequences of success is having to move forward, having to let go of the past, having to let go of where we are, or the person that we think we are, or the person that we have been being. So some really good reasons why success can bring up lots of feelings of loss and letting go. But as I was looking at fear of success, I found three more. And one of these was fear of false success. Now, when we look into that, that's very similar and very close to the fourth one, which I'll come back to. But in this fear of false success, that's when we have very often either we are telling ourselves or everyone around us is telling us, this is what success looks like. This is what you want. This is what it feels like. So it could be, say as a writer, signing the book deal that you think you want. Or it could be the career that you've been planning for or aiming for a really long time, but maybe it's just not right for you anymore. Maybe it's what your family have told you your whole life, who you are, who you want to be. Maybe we've got to a point where we're starting to experience that success and we realise it's not right for us. We realise it's not our path. But what we know is, if we go any further down this path, we're going to have to turn around. Because we can't keep going down this path because it's not our true path. And I think most of us have gone down some dead ends. Most of us have gone down paths that weren't really true to who we are. They weren't really that authentic success, or, what we felt was within us, that was really expressing our gift. But that fear of false success can be very powerful, and it can mean letting go again of a plan that we had maybe 2 years ago, maybe the whole life. And it can be very challenging to let go of that. The fourth type of fear of success is one I really like to explore, because it's the fear of being, having, or doing what we falsely believe we need to be, do, or have in order to be successful. So it sounds a lot like the fear of false success. It really does, right? But there's a difference. And the reason I think this one is so important is because for me this rings true with the people who have suffered from success, the victims of success. And people I mean by that are people like Prince, people like Avicii, people like Elvis Presley, people like Michael Jackson, people like Heath Ledger, who are incredibly gifted human beings, but who had people around them that they couldn't really trust. They had people around them who said, you need to keep going. They had, teachers, doctors, the people around them who just wanted them to keep doing what they were doing. They just wanted to keep the money train rolling. And some people will never get into that situation because they're just too scared of all that kind of pressure, all that pressure, all those people telling you, if you want to do this, you have to do it this way. If you want to do that, you have to do it that way. And that's something really interesting to explore. And it's something that I think we need to question over and over again as we move forward and forward and forward. How much of that is true? And how much can I create success on my own terms? How much is my true success going to be to break all these rules and do it exactly the way that I think is right and follow my heart? And the fifth one, which is what I really call, for me, this is true fear of success, is the actual fear of being, doing, or having the very thing we want to be, do, or have. And the way I find that it's really easy to explain this, which people seem to get, is from my experience as a writer. So in our sort of community of writers and people who want to write a book or write an article or anything, we're kind of all, it's a huge fear. There's a huge fear from people. And so for many people, what they want is they want a publisher, or a critic or an editor who's going to tell them, yes, we want to publish your book. And it's not even about the money. Or an editor that says, yes, I want to publish that article that you write. And we're desperate for somebody to tell us you're good enough to write a book. You can do this, you can write. You're a writer, you're an author. And I always remember getting together my first big festival writing, and how hard almost everyone in this whole big place found it to just say, yes, I'm an author, or I'm a writer. Everyone came in there like, well, I'm kind of a writer. I'm kind of a writer. And there's so much we attach to this thing of like, somebody give me permission. I know somebody out there did this thing of giving everyone a permission slip to write. We want this permission. We want to know we're good enough. And then what happens for a lot of people is the second they get that book deal, the second they get that publishing deal, they come and they sit down with the pen or the computer. They sit down and it's like, oh my God, what am I going to do now? This is work now. This is work. And it's like, and it's actually sitting down to write that freaks us out. So the very thing that we dream of, we want, that's in our blood, that we want to do, it terrifies us. Why? Well, for a start, the ego gets in the way and it starts telling us all the things that we should be doing. Oh, you should be going and doing this. Oh, you should be going and doing that. All these things, and it kind of gets in our head. And I believe that the reason it does that is because it doesn't want us to get to the next stage. It doesn't want us to get to that success stage of writing, of just writing. But why? Why do we have such a difficult time? And this is this is the core. This is the real core of that fear of success. And I can only explain it from my own point of view. When I sit down to write, and I go, and I start writing, it feels like flying. It's the closest thing to heaven. And everything goes away. I can sit and I can write, and I don't feel hungry, and I don't feel thirsty. I lose all track of time. And I get into that space that some people would call Zen flow, where it all just comes together. And I feel completely alive. And everything makes sense. All the trash, all the difficulties, all the wrong things, all the mistakes come together and become a kind of source material. They become what gets burned in that sort of fire, in that phoenix rising from the ashes. And in that moment, I am me. I am truly myself. Not the ego self. I am true to who I am. And when I'm in this state, I am truly alive. And I feel alive. And when I started to understand this, what I realised is I hadn't just been researching fear of success for a year. I'd been experiencing and researching success for over 10 years because I was doing this thing called Pearl Escapes. I was doing this thing called the stuff that makes you feel real good. Massages, trips, food, dancing, all these things. And after I've been doing it for a little while, I realised in another business training that my job was to help people feel alive. What a great job. What a great job. To help people feel successful. And what was great about it is I couldn't do that without making myself feel alive, without making myself feel successful. And as I did that, slowly, I had to come alive. And what happened was, I had to come out of this state that we call in grief, denial. I had to start feeling my feelings. I had to start feeling and being true to myself. And slowly, slowly, I came back to my true self. And now, the thing that I know is that I don't need to write to feel alive. I don't need to dance to feel alive. I don't need to jump out of a plane to feel alive. I can just sit there and I can let go and I can switch off the mind, because I've done all this training with meditation gurus whose ultimate lesson is always the same, whether they are Vietnamese monk or a Mexican Toltec shaman or an Indian guru. The lesson is always the same: to feel alive, to be in the moment, to enjoy life. And in that moment of feeling alive, I recognise one thing: that it's all perfect, that my life is perfect, that everything is happening perfectly, that my journey is perfect. And in that moment, when I come alive and I feel all of that, I come into this wonderful stage of acceptance. And fear of success, feeling alive, whatever you want to call it, is a grief process. And it helps us through the grief process of living in denial, living in the dark, living in shadows, not being true to who we are, and spending our lives numb. And it wakes us up and it makes us feel alive, and it makes us accept just how great life truly is. Thank you so much. I hope it helps.